I learned a phrase that I didn't ever want to learn in a group therapy session called homicidal ideation. It's just like a hope for someone else to pass away. And um, I learned about this in a therapy session and learned about this from the person that I was with. And it was that day that I called some pastors in my life and I asked them, what do I do? I'm living in a different flat, but I'm in the same house. What do I do? And they shared with me, Kerena, do you feel unsafe? I said, well, no, I don't feel unsafe. And they said, well, like stay until you feel unsafe. I called a mentor of mine right after and um, I told him what had happened. And he said, Kerena, um, if you stay until it feels unsafe, it's too late.
Yeah.
So me and a couple of other people are going to come tonight and move you out.
All right. Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk About It with Jackie and Megan. Today we are here with Kerena Lawler. She is actually someone I met at college at Moody Bible Institute. She has her undergraduate in women's ministry and then her master's degree in theology. So, Kerena, would you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Kerena. Yes, I got my undergrad in ministry to women. Me and Megan were in classes together, so we'd stay up all night in the library writing big theology papers for all of our hopes and dreams. So it was fun to meet that way and fun to be connected now. I am a Chicago girly, so I came to the city when I went to school and then I stayed here. So it's almost been 10 years now. I own a little pink bungalow in the city, and then all my friends, we all live together and we garden together and do family meals together. I am also a theologian, so I went on and did seminary degree as well. Throughout seminary degree, fell in love, got married, sooner or later got divorced right after I graduated, right after I bought a home, and then that kind of just rolled this whole journey out that the Lord brought me through of kind of everything I always never wanted. But the Lord's been like weaving so much shimmery goodness through it in ways that I just really didn't think were possible. So, yeah, that's like a little bit about me. I love rollerblading. That's a big part of my life. I'm a rug maker. I'm a muralist, but like in an amateur way. I can't make like a cool unicorn or a dinosaur, but I can make very satisfying dysmorphous blobs. And I love perennials, so I'm constantly planting and watering and just sticking my hands in soil to see what can grow in the next season.
You say you can't paint, but I think you have a shark mural. So that
Okay,
feels a
yeah.
little more than just
Except
blobs.
that one, I do have a shark mural. However, I used a stencil that my best friend made out of like a pizza box. I gave her a box and I said, "Can you cut out four different sharks for me?" And she did it, and then I traced them on my walls. So,
It
yeah.
still counts. We'll count
Mhm.
it.
I think it
Yeah,
still
we'll count it
counts.
anyways. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I know you started to share some of your story, but we wanted to have you on just because it's so funny. I've never met you in person, but I
Mhm.
feel like I kind of know you because of Instagram.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and you would started to share, bits and pieces of your story, and I noticed you were doing a lot of ministry, I think in person as well, but also on Instagram for women.
Mhm.
Um, And I know, you have your theology degree, so I just wanted to hear more about your story. I thought it would be something really beneficial for other women to hear,
Yeah.
and then how it led you to the ministry that you're in. So, however much you're comfortable just sharing your story and then the ministry that you're doing now. But I guess we can start with more of your story.
Yeah, I would love to share some of my story. Thank you for asking me about that. Um, it's so interesting kicking off sharing about a story because it's like I'm so not a professional in so many different things. But what I am is like I'm an expert in what happened to me. So anybody who's listening to this, like your story is going to be different, and your story is really serious and really important and matters so much to God, and God can use it for his kingdom and for your good and for good around you. If you just like have your heart postured in a way that's like ready to be interacting with him. So anyways, so I don't know. I think that sometimes stories can feel like effervescent or like my story's not bad enough or things like this. So I don't know. I just like to caveat with that, but I'd love to share you my story. It kind of starts in a class I think Megan and I were in together. It was called Ministering to Women in Pain, and we every week would learn different catastrophic, awful things that happen to women globally, historically, and then we would all go home weeping. We were 18, 19 at the time. I would go home, stand in the shower, sob, and then every week I would pray, God, can you spare me from these things? Because I don't think I'd love you anymore, and I don't think I'd love being a girl anymore if any of these things happened to me. And this is how that whole 16 weeks went. I would go in, hear these horrible, terrible, tragic things, sob, God, would you spare me? Fast forward a few years, graduated from my master's program, bought a home with my husband, did the like natural Christian path, fell in love, everything was beautiful, starting a family. And a lot of these things that I learned about ministering to women in pain started happening in my life, one after the other, pretty quickly. I had a miscarriage and it like was pretty devastating for me. I didn't really know what to do with that. And I didn't know anyone at the time who was my age who had had one before. And then kind of slowly but surely, things just started unraveling in my marriage. Discovered infidelity. And then that slowly continued to morph into Kerena, I don't love you, and I never have. And I don't think I ever will. That kind of slowly morphed into it's like God's fault that I don't love you, Kerena. It's not my fault. I wish that I did, but I don't. So I don't know like what to do, and I'm trying. And this just like thing after thing started happening, and what slowly became was I stopped telling people what was happening. I learned really quickly from some manipulation and control that you're not allowed to say what happened. You can't tell your mom. You can't tell your friends. You can't say it out loud um, because saying it out loud brings shame. And you don't want to bring shame on somebody who did something wrong. So you can't say it out loud. And then as time went on, me finding problems in my marriage became me finding problems in myself. Um, because that's just kind of how abuse works. You just get trained to learn the things that are happening to you that aren't your fault. You start believing that it's because of you and that they are your fault. So then you don't tell anybody anything. Then you start just believing all these lies about who you are, what's happening to you. Um, and so this went on. I was married for 2.5 years, and things were just getting darker and darker. And my spouse was just becoming like more emotionally and spiritually and relationally violent as time went. And I just took it on as I like, this is my fault. It's my fault for bringing up a problem because now I've devastated my spouse. It's my fault for saying, ouch, please don't be in love with somebody else. Just don't say that. Um, and let them be in love with someone else. It's not their fault. It must be my fault. It was in the December time of 2022, so right before 2023. And I was on a trip. I was in Arizona visiting with my family, and I got a phone call from my spouse at the time, and he was on his way to go to the hospital. And so that kind of started me on a journey of racing back to my Chicago home to help save my spouse's life. As that was happening, I was deep in ministry leadership. I wasn't a pastor, but there was a lot of like lay pastoral ministry happening there. leading small groups, leading a women's ministry, on the preaching rotation. In fact, I had a sermon coming up 5 days after I got like the first worst phone call of my life about wonder and the incarnation. And my pastors called and like, do you still want to preach this? And I was like, yes, let me preach. Like, let me look forward to something. And so I raced back to Chicago to help save my spouse's life, got up on the pulpit and preached, and helped send my spouse to get some serious, real help that they really badly needed, to save their life. And it was while they were there getting a lot of help and a lot of resourcing that one of the helpers there called me and they said, "Hey, Kerena, I just want to let you know, everything's actually a lot darker than you think it is. Um, there's a lot of really scary things that you're going to find out. And I just want you to know you're going to feel a lot of anger in your body. Um, and there's going to be things that are unimaginable to you right now. They're all going to start coming out." And so it was 3 months of just um, pure trying to survive what was going on. While my spouse was getting some help, was gone for about 30 days, a month, asked me to divorce. He had shared that his options were death or divorce. And so God wanted us to get divorced, because the only path forward was someone has to die. We have to get divorced. Um, of course, that is the most confusing thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. Um, yeah, it was like gutting in every way. It was everything I always never wanted. So spiritually dark, relationally mind-boggling. I had no idea what this was. All I knew was like, how do I get to the next day?
Mm.
And so as the next day kept coming, I did what you're supposed to do as a Christian is find a way forward for reconciliation. And so I asked for separation instead of divorce, and that was agreed upon for a time. The house I live in is a multi-flat. So I lived in one of the flats. My spouse, when they got out of a treatment, came and lived in one of our other flats. And it was during that time, I was really in intensive therapy, meeting a couple of times a week with a therapist. And she was helping me understand the things that were happening to me. I did not know. I couldn't understand. She was putting words to it. And this was kind of when um, I started realizing, oh, this is really bad. And it's actually maybe not my fault.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and even if it is my fault, I know it's badder than I think it is. It's worse than I think it could be. I learned a phrase that I didn't ever want to learn, in a group therapy session called homicidal ideation. It's just like a hope for someone else to pass away. And I learned about this in a therapy session and learned about this from the person that I was with. And it was that day that I called some pastors in my life and I asked them, what do I do? I'm living in a different flat, but I'm in the same house. What do I do? And they shared with me, Kerena, do you feel unsafe? I said, well, no, I don't feel unsafe. And they said, well, like stay until you feel unsafe. I called a mentor of mine right after and um, I told him what had happened. And he said, Kerena, um, if you stay until it feels unsafe, it's too late.
Yeah.
So me and a couple of other people are going to come tonight and move you out. I had no idea what to do with that. That felt so intense. I was like, this is too big. No, no, like it's okay. It's okay. I went out on my porch to sob And a neighbor who I'd only met once, she was walking by and she sees me and she says, Karina, what's going on? I tell her. She invites me in. And her husband, they said, can you move in with us tonight, please? We would really like that.
Mm.
So they brought their red wagon over to my second flat and we packed my things up and we wheeled it over to their house. Um, those two people helped save my life. That mentor that I called that said, you can't stay until you feel unsafe. That's too late.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm telling you from the outside that you are unsafe. You
Mhm.
have to leave. And then this neighbor, not someone from my church, not someone that I knew deeply, someone who saw me in need, stopped, asked what the need was. And before I could even say I need a place to go, she said, can you please move in with us tonight? They made a place for me. They had a robe for me. They had a bedroom for me. They put me on their grocery list. They did all my chores for me. And I moved in with them for 4 months. It was while I was there that I started trying to get the courage towards filing for divorce. In
Mm.
this season, nobody had filed. It was said, hey, Karina, I'm going to divorce you, but nothing had happened. So I was waiting. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm a Christian girl. I can't divorce my spouse. My family was in town, as they regularly were. My parents would come in every month to be with me. And my mom was really encouraging me, Karina, I think that you need to file. I think it's going to be
Mm.
really good for you. And it's going to be really empowering for you. And it was in July. And I'd finally decided, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. I think I can do it. And a woman had reached out to me and she said, hey, do you know this person? And I had said, yeah, in fact, I do. That's my spouse, and we're not living together, and we're separated, and we're about to go through a divorce. But yeah, I do. And she was really devastated, and she was like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never went on a date, but we were going to. But then I like looked up online. I found your name, and I thought, what if? And I just never imagined you guys would be together." And it was this interaction, having a woman reach out to me, that I was like, oh, I can't divorce my spouse for my own safety and self, but I can totally do it if it helps another woman. Um, if it helps another woman know she's not cheating. Um, because I don't want anyone else to reach out in the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months and not know. What if they go on a date with someone who's married and they didn't know that? So anyway, so I got all the courage I needed and I was gonna go and I was gonna file. And then sure enough, the next day, of course, I got served papers. And it was actually really relieving because then I didn't have to do it. And I was so thankful that I didn't. Um, and so I didn't have to file. My spouse filed against me.
Mm.
And I call that season my like asunder my like unwanted asunder season, because when you get engaged to when you get married, it's like everything's white and everything's exciting and you're looking forward to so much. And when you get papers served to you for a divorce before it's finalized in court, it's this weird like, I'm still married, but I'm about to not be. I'm still married, but I'm like actually not a wife. So like this is such a weird season that I'm in, and we're approaching this thing, but not together. This isn't what I wanted. This is what's happening. Um, anyhow, so divorce day came, and that was the first time I like really prayed out loud during this. I was praying in my head, and there were a lot of people praying over and with me. And the first time I prayed like for real out loud, my lawyer emailed and she said, hey, just so you know, it's finalized and you're divorced and the judge wishes you good luck. And I remember sitting there and my pastors were there and my best friends were there. And I was just sobbing and I just asked God, don't hate me. Do you hate me? And that felt so sad that that was my prayer, and really healing that that was my prayer. Um, and the good news is that he doesn't hate women who are divorced. He just really doesn't hate women who are divorced. And so anyway, I that's what happened. I was divorced, and I knew from the moment things started going real south in my marriage about a year before divorce was finalized that I wanted to be somebody who, even if not in the moment, uh, kept God. And I knew that I like wanted him to keep me too. So there wasn't this effervescent nearness with the Lord during that time. A lot of people talk about grief and they're like, I felt so close to God. That wasn't there for me. But there also wasn't this like, who is God? Why is he doing this? How could he be good if this is happening to me? There wasn't this like nearness or this pushing. It was kind of just this like, can you help me survive this stuff? Can you help me learn how to breathe again? Because I have panics now, panic attacks. Can you help me learn how to eat again? Because I couldn't eat for months. Can you
Mm.
help me learn how to sleep again? Because every nightmare is um like horrifying. Can you help me? Um, so I didn't feel near and I didn't feel far. I just wanted help. And and I think that was like actually the most genuine prayers I've ever prayed in my life were the littlest ones that were just like in my brain and heart. They were literally just on repeat. Help me, oh God, help me. Will you please help me? God, oh help, help, help. God, help me for a year and a half. And I think those are the most sincere prayers I'll probably ever have for God. Um, a lot changed during my divorce, for really shimmery, beautiful ways and in really tragic ways. As I was going through all my stuff, I was asked to step down from the all of the ministries that I was partaking in the church. And I was an established leader, and so that was pretty devastating for me to not have it be a choice that we made together. And a lot of those things I would have self-elected out of. As a trusted leader, I was going to take steps back from, but it was pretty hard to be sat down and told, effective
Mm.
immediately, you're done with all of the things that you've participated in. Um, so that was pretty devastating to have done nothing wrong and to have everything taken away. Uh, I moved out of my house that I had just bought and lived away from it for months. Didn't know if I would ever see it again. Um, in my workplace, there were a lot of conversations. I worked at a Christian employer, and they wanted to hear all the details of the story in order to decide if it was a godly divorce or not, to decide if I'm allowed to or not allowed to keep my job. So I had to detail every traumatic thing that happened to me, in order to have a chance to keep having a paycheck. Um, and so just it was kind of like on all fronts. This was thing that I didn't do. I was now the one who had to deal with the consequences of. Um, yeah, and then so there were these like massive tragedies that were happening through it. And then there were these like most glimmering things that I don't think I would have ever known as sweetly as I did if it weren't for these things. Like my dad would text me every day for a year, and he calls me Smooch, and he would text me every morning, "Hey Smooch, you deserve a better friend. Hey Smooch, I'm in the airport and I'm just thinking about you. I'm flying to this place. You're flying with me. Oh hey Smooch, I just want you to know I delight in you. You're just a delight." And just literally every day, I never texted back. He would just send me these texts of joy and delight and like his way of seeing me over and over and over. I had a mentor of mine. He's kind of like a second dad. He'd call me every morning and he would say, "Hey, baby, you just cry. I'll just pray."
Mm.
And I would just lay in my bed sobbing, like sobbing, the rash type sobbing where you got like the salt makes your skin peel off. "You just cry, baby. I'll just pray." Every day. My mom, she said, "I'm going to come see you every month." She lives on the other side of the country. She'd fly to me every month just to be with me, to do my dishes, to do my laundry, and to tell me that this isn't going to be this way forever. My mom did that. My best friends did sleepover rotations for me. I didn't have to sleep in a bed alone for the first couple of months of being
Mm.
alone because my friends made a sleepover rotation and just would show up at my door, open it up, and come inside. Another friend bought a security system for me, installed it for me, and paid for the subscription for a year. I had friends. A friend is a locksmith who I hadn't seen for years. It was one phone call and he was there in an hour and he changed every lock in my house. And my neighbors, all of my neighbors have keys to my house. And one of my neighbors grills every day. He would come over every day, check on me at 4 p.m. and leave dinner in my fridge just to make sure I was safe and okay and had food, even if I was never going to eat it. I had like people on prayer rotations. They would come and they would come and pray. And even if I wasn't there, they would come in my house and they would come and pray in all of the rooms. Um, I had friends that would hold me when I was going through panic attacks. And that's a scary thing, just to watch someone shake violently, and just hold me and learn how can I co-regulate with Kerena in this. I had friends do that. They didn't have to do that. I had therapists who told me what words to call things. Kerena, that's abuse. The word for that is abuse. Kerena, that's homicidal ideation. That's the word for that. Hey, Kerena, you're a survivor. Do you know that? These things that like I was like, I don't ascribe to any of that. And they were like, well, it's just true of who you are. And I just had people, even people who like would cast vision for me, people who would say, Kerena, you're gonna dream again of having family. And it's not a sin to dream that. And they would tell me it over and over again. So I had like all of these heinous, awful things happen. At the same time, I had like the most effervescent, um, beautiful interventions that I just like really didn't think I was ever gonna experience that type of sweetness ever. And then I did. So you never really think as a person you're gonna be the one who has the story happen. When you're in ministry school, at least, you think like, oh, I'm going to be the one to minister. I'm going to step in. I'm going to move close to women as they go through whatever it is. I'm going to move in. You don't ever think I'm going to be the one that it happens to. And sure enough, a lot of people are the one that it happens to. We all go through traumas of our own and big things of ourselves. And the weird part about that is I have an undergrad degree and I have a master's degree. And in every single way, what has happened in my life qualifies me way more to women's hearts than pieces of paper and what I studied.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't think that was going to happen until I started telling some people, hey, if you ever know someone going through a divorce, you can give them my phone number and tell them my story, and they can call me. And then starting to get calls from women that I didn't know from other states saying, hey, I'm going through this. Can you talk? Or, just things that are like, hey, if anybody has ever gone through a miscarriage, if they want someone who's gone through it who will talk about it, I'll always talk about it. And then having, people that I don't know come and reach out, a friend of a friend, hey, so and so told me, would you be willing? And being like, whoa, no one has ever come up to me and been like, hey, girl, you've got your master's in theology. Tell me this thing about God ever. That's never happened. But I've had so many women say, this awful, terrible, tragic thing has happened to me. And even if that same thing didn't happen to you, I know something hard and terrible has happened to you. Um, Maybe you're not going to judge me if I tell you. Maybe you're not going to hate me, and maybe you're not going to tell me that God hates me if I tell you what happened. So that's been like the most beautiful, redemptive reality of the most heinous, no good thing that I never wanted to happen. That I'm like not thankful that happened, but I'm thankful for what has happened since.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of all over the place. Also, when I think about the stories, I'm like, there's so much confusion. So much of abuse is just trapped in confusion. and your reality is so morphed and so not real that even getting stories out, I'm like, what's real? And what happened? And was that made up? And something's just, so it's also kind of just all over the place. And you're very welcome to ask me what you'd like. And I'm so excited to talk about it with you. But that's a little bit about my story and what kind of the Lord has done through awful, heinous, no good evil, and how he's kind of been weaving some shimmery stuff back for my heart and then for hearts of, hopefully, for hearts of other women as well as they walk through things they shouldn't have to ever walk through.
No, I think you did a great job of kind of telling a summary of your story. I can't imagine how hard that has to be to share and make it cohesive and make sense. And I mean, I think you
Right.
did an incredible job.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
and
just like trying not
it's
to cry.
yeah, it's
Right.
hard to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I was actually right before this. I was texting some of my friends and I was crying and I was like, did I make all this up? Um, like just for someone to think that I have a story. And my friends were like, nope, we were there. I promise you, you didn't make it up. And I'm like, okay, like, what if I say it dumb? And they're like, then say it dumb. Like, who cares? Just say it dumb. Women need to hear it. Even if
Yeah.
you think it's in a silly way, women need to know that there are girls who have gone through abuse, who are highly theologically educated, who didn't choose the wrong spouse. Their spouse chose to sin against them.
Yeah.
And they need to know that God can still keep you and you can still keep God. So go and say it in a silly way, even if you don't know how, even if you're totally like freaked out that it's going to sound silly. So, yeah, that's
Well, and I
me.
think too, like so many women who experience abuse, like you're talking about the confusion, and they're gonna
Mhm.
go, well, if I knew more, or maybe if I,
Mhm.
and it's like, no, you have these degrees, and yet that was still the
Yeah,
experience. It's not because
right,
you were lacking in some way. And so even
right.
women who don't have theological degrees
Oh,
who
yeah.
are experiencing abuse and are feeling that confusion, it's not because something is lacking in them, you know? And so I
Mhm.
think I don't think you shared it dumbly. I think you shared
Oh,
it
thanks.
beautifully and
Oh,
very
thanks.
coherently.
Yeah.
But even if you had, like that's the reality of the experience.
It is the reality of the experience. You feel utterly stupid. You feel so dumb and you have no idea what's real. And I had a friend tell me, she said, Karina, I just need you to know it's the fooler's fault for fooling. It's not the fooler's fault, the fooled one's fault for getting tricked.
Hmm.
And that kind of revolutionized my experience because, yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, foolers are really good at what they do, which is fooling you. Um, and
And we
nobody knows any
should
different.
be able to trust our spouse. We should be
Yes,
able to believe that they love
yes,
us and
yes. Yeah.
want the best for us.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not someone's fault for believing those good things.
Yes, and for believing things that they swore to God and swore to you that they would do. You swore that
Yeah.
you would all of these things, and I believe you. I believe you. Even so, I must be the problem. I must be out of my mind because this doesn't make sense. Yeah.
I think something you touched on that is so important is that your therapist helped you name what happened and how hard of a
Oh my
time
gosh,
you
yeah.
had naming what happened because I know from my own experience and just other
Mm,
women in my life, it's
hmm.
very hard to name that something was abuse because
Yeah.
first of all, it's saying that you were a victim of it and then you deal with all the guilt of like, how did I let that happen to me? That's a phrase I struggle
Yeah.
with. How did I let that happen? But and you
Right.
don't want to name it that because then you have to actually process that that's what
Right.
happened to you and that's so much heavier and bigger than like, oh, it was a toxic marriage or a toxic relationship. But
Hmm.
that's how you begin to heal is you have to actually name what happened to you, no matter how horrible it was. I think it's
Hmm.
so amazing that you had therapists that could walk through you with it
Oh my
to
gosh, yeah.
name what actually happened. And even now, it's like later you struggle and you ask yourself, did that actually happen to me? Is that actually what
Oh yeah.
happened? Or am I being dramatic? Like I hear you saying that
Right.
now.
Right.
Even
Oh
after
yeah.
you said to me,
Yes.
like objectively, that was
Oh,
abusive and
yes.
horrible, but you
Yes.
still question yourself. And I think
Oh,
so
yeah.
many women do that. Like even years later, like, well, was it my fault? Is that actually what happened? Was it that bad,
Mhm.
or am I
Oh, yeah.
crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one of the big reasons women, anybody, women especially need to be vocal about
Yeah.
what's happening in their life, in their relationship. They need those safe places to go to and say, hey, this is what happened. This was the interaction I had with my spouse, with my partner.
Mhm.
Can you tell me back what I said? Because isolation is a huge tactic for abuse.
Mhm.
When you start to pull away and when the person you're with starts to encourage and push and ask for you to pull away, you're just processing these things on your own. But there's something that happens when you say a terrible story out loud and you watch someone's face and how they interact and you
Mhm.
see them get like jump
Mhm.
scared and you're like you see them like like catch their breath and
Yeah.
you're like what,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like it's not that bad, but you're seeing in real time how someone's interacting with the reality of the situation and it really is that bad. But when you're pulled away and isolated you have no one around you to tell you, hey, it's that bad.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think what is like simultaneously so beautiful, but also like what breaks my heart about your story is that you had so many like outside voices, like what you're saying. You had people who could tell you, you need to get out, it's not safe,
Yeah.
this is what that word means. But then
Yeah.
you also had, a church that was telling you to step down. You had a job
Yeah.
that was doubting whether or not you were right in getting
Yes.
divorced.
Exactly right.
And I think unfortunately that is an experience a lot of people have is it's a very vulnerable thing to open up to outside voices. It
Yes.
can kind
Yeah.
of feel almost safer to be isolated because there's that chance that someone is not going to approach your story with kindness and care. And I
Yeah.
and I know unfortunately, and it's just so heartbreaking to me that a lot of times that does happen within the church or it happens within Christian circles because we
Yeah.
have these messages about divorce and just people have these beliefs about it. And so I'm curious for you, growing up, you grew up a Christian.
Oh yeah.
What were some of the messages that you just had kind of ingrained in you
Yeah.
about how God views divorce? I remember,
Right.
you just saying that when it was like you were served papers and it was finalized, your first prayer was, God,
Yeah.
you hate me. And I know
Yes.
for a lot of women that is the almost knee-jerk or sort of subconscious feeling of
Yeah.
God hates divorce, and so
Right.
does he hate me?
Yeah.
I just, yeah, those messages are so permeated in our
Are.
community. Did you
Yeah.
experience that?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's such a big one too, because growing up, the messages I heard about divorce were just you don't.
Yeah.
I grew up in like suburb area, and it's just something you don't do.
Mm.
And the only people I knew who were divorced were already remarried. Like I was a kid and they were remarried, and you didn't really know why they were divorced, but you knew that they were remarried. And so it was just something you don't talk about. Divorce is just a kind of a thing that you hope doesn't happen to you and is really bad. It's really big, it's really bad. Um, so it's just not something you do. So no, there was kind of no message about divorce growing up. Um, there wasn't a lot there. There was a lot of messages I had about like right reconciliation. And so I had some family members walk through infidelity and I watched them, one of them choose like repentance and reconciliation. And I watched the other one choose, you know what, I think I do want forgiveness and reconciliation. And I watched that walk through in their life in a really beautiful and redemptive way. And I don't think that was the right or only option forward, but that was the option they chose. And I think it was so good and holy and blessed to see that and to be like a witness to that growing up. And then in college, actually, is when I heard the most messages about divorce because I went to a Bible college. And there were a lot of messages that I heard that were really good in Bible college about just, um, like, your life's not over. if you get divorced, and
Mm.
God can still use and work and, have a life for you and all of these things. So I had like good messages spoken to me in college, and then I also had horrible messages spoken to me in college where, I'd have people say in a class that if you get divorced and remarried for any reason at all, that's adultery. You're an adulterer and you're not really married. And I would sit in these classes, and at the time I was a single woman, and I would watch my peers whose parents were divorced and remarried, and they were a child from a parent who was remarried, and they'd be sobbing in class because their professor just said, Your mom's not married and she's a single mom to you. And I'd be like, What is going on here? So I heard these messages that were really strong of, um, remarriage is adultery. If you are divorced, God can still use you. But now you're like, it's like, you're tainted. Like you're like less than, and you're like kind of like spooky in the church. And or you're like a story, you're
Yeah.
either like, let's avoid it, or you're like, tell us the bad thing that happened and how God fixed it. And it's
Mm.
kind of like this polarizing reality. And those were the messages that I heard about divorce, where you don't do it. If you do, maybe God can still use you. You can still dream. And of course, you could never be remarried because, well, that's clearly adultery. And then it was actually so confusing because as a college student, I was like, I don't really need to learn a lot about this because I'm never going to get divorced. And so I didn't really apply myself to learn what are my theologies of divorce and remarriage. And so, of course, until I was walking through that season and then really faced with, well, what do I think about what God thinks about this? And what do I think about what I think about this for the church? And I had a lot of really faithful Christians who were way beyond my years come alongside of me and really help me with hard passages. There's a lot of really hard passages in scripture about divorce, and the words are interesting and really complex, and the contexts are really interesting. And there are real passages that are really hard to understand that are really there. But then there's some passages that are just like sometimes misused or mistranslated sometimes. But all that to say, I had a woman who really helped me, and she came to me and she said, Hey, Kerena, I just want you to know God gave laws so that women could be divorced safely in scripture. I just want you to know that God gave divorce as a good gift in light of the fall, as a good gift for women to get safely out of their marriages. And so there like legally had to be, the Lord gave these laws of how there legally had to be these certificates that were drawn up, so that women could be freed. And so anyway, she just walked me through like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, this isn't how God intended things in creation, but because of the fall,
Right.
all of God's laws are made as a temporary satisfaction for what Jesus is going to do. And now what Jesus has done, which he has satisfied the law, but which is, she's like, yeah, the Lord made laws so that women could get safe. And she just walked me through that. And I was like a sobby mess. And she's never been divorced. She just cares about women so deeply and has walked a long life of loving God and loving women. And it kind of just like gave me so much encouragement. And that was the first time I learned anything about divorce that felt hopeful, or like God really cares about people who are divorced, because he's actually creating these laws so that there's some safety,
Yeah.
involved there. So, yeah, I didn't really hear a lot about divorce, heard a lot in college, then had to really figure it out as I was going through it. Yeah.
In the trenches.
In the trenches. Absolutely. Yep. In the trenches.
Yeah, I'm also curious, just anything messaging. I feel like I've never
Hmm.
heard about this when I was growing up as a Christian, just
Hmm.
abuse and like looking out for the red flags of what could be abusive and
Yeah.
dating. I feel like we are
Yeah.
so under-equipped for that as Christians. It's like just
Hmm.
get married, everything will
Hmm.
be fine.
Really.
Yeah.
I would
And
love to talk about that.
Yeah, I think so many women are caught in abusive relationships or marriages and they just can't see it for what it is outside of the church and in the church. But I feel like there are especially things that we learn in the church that makes it hard for us to realize, um,
Mhm.
even different forms of abuse. So I don't know if that's something like
Mm,
growing up you ever heard about abusive relationships or things to look out
mm,
for. So
Mhm.
kind of that, but then also what you've learned are things to look out for, maybe like looking back. I know for me, it's looking back. I can kind of see, oh,
Yeah,
wait, that's, something to look out for.
right. Yeah, I love what you said about looking back because I think
Mhm.
looking back is where so much of like comfort comes to my heart. When I look back, I can see some of the red flags.
Yeah.
But when I look back, I can also see like where the Lord actually was with me, and I just had no idea. So I love that phrase of like looking back. Yeah, I mean, I think like growing up, what did I hear about divorce abuse was not a lot. Again, not a lot about abuse. And I think there were just, you know, it's confusing because I think it's like you want to teach people who are growing up right living. You want to teach people what's holy and what's good and
Mhm.
what is like satisfying and pleasing to the Lord. Fidelity in marriage is holy and pleasing to the Lord. Committing to your vows, being true to God and your spouse, being safe with your body, being consistent with your words over time, having self control and emotional regulation. These things are really good to be teaching people as they grow up. And I think what was missed for me, and I can understand how it was missed,
Mhm.
was hey, and what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if someone isn't safe with their body? What if someone makes a choice that is inconsistent with what they said they would do? What if someone asks you to not say something that happened? What happens if holy, right, good, safe living isn't how someone interacts with you? Then what? And that was the piece that was missing for me was there was no what happens if those things don't happen. So I just, and rightly so, want to forge forward believing the best. But I also want to forge forward like in reality as well of, so yeah, I didn't really have a lot of messaging about what is abuse other than like if someone punches you in the face on the street,
Mhm.
that's not a good option,
with
right?
Mhm.
witnesses.
With witnesses and
Right.
there's a mark, right? Like and
Yeah.
and then also that's also a lot of times not enough. Well, what were you doing? What time of day was it? Well, what were you wearing? Like there's a lot of things that go into that. So
Yeah.
but red flags, man, looking back, there's so many things that I look back for at and I'm like, oh, me and everyone in my life have like a bucket of red flags that we're just like scouting around, looking out and being like, we're equipped when you go through something like this. And I know that you've talked some about this, Jackie, as well. You've shared even today. You can look back and see some of those red flags. So now you feel more equipped.
Mhm.
Some of those things that I think for me are looking and seeing, if someone has a grandiose sense of self and a lack of humility, that is something to be concerned for. Um, if there's like, a sense of like, I just hate who I am. That's also not humility. If you just really hate who you are, that's not humility. That's not rightly understanding who you are and being in the imago Dei. Things that are like, wow, if someone views you as being perfect, everything, you're so wonderful and you're perfect.
Mhm.
Um, I'd be concerned for that because you can be put on a really high pedestal, not really seen as a whole human being with like flaws and foibles. But then when you mess up in their eyes, you're never going to be put back there. A far safer reality is seeing someone as, oh, these are things that I like about them. These are things that I don't like about them. But as a whole, I really enjoy being around them, kind of having this holistic sense.
Mhm.
Things that are like, if there's isolation happening, when they say things like, hey, I don't really like that mentor that you've had for 6 years. It just makes me uncomfortable when you talk to them. Or, I think it's a little bit creepy the way you're best friends with that girl. Don't you think it's kind of creepy how close you are? Why are you telling your mom that kind of stuff? Do you think
Mhm.
that's like a little inappropriate to talk to your mom about these problems that we're having? Some when there's isolation that's being pushed, Um, Shifting blame is a big one as well. If you come to someone and you say, "Hey, I found out that you did this wrong thing," and their response is, "I can't believe you looked into my things to find that out.
Mm,
I'm so like I can't trust you anymore because you looked through my things."
mm,
That is shifting blame. The problem isn't that I found out. The problem is that that person did that wrong
mm.
thing. And if
Yeah.
someone makes you believe that you finding out that they did something wrong is the problem, you need to run.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's like seriously dangerous. And I had no idea that that was dangerous. I just believed, oh my gosh, I'm untrustworthy.
Mm,
Because how dare I? How dare I find out that my spouse is in love with someone else? I can't believe it. I can't believe I would have looked at that. You're not the problem for finding something out. The problem is what happened. And if someone
mm,
shifts that, run. It's danger. Oh my gosh. Other things are just constant control. And you'll see it creep up over time and get bigger and bigger. But things that are like, hey, I know that you're crying because of something that I did. Can you summarize how you feel in 3 sentences or less? Just a little emotionally tired. I took that as, oh, they have good boundaries. They know what they can handle. But when someone says controls you in that way, can you say what you feel in 3 sentences or less? And it'll just be things like that where you're like, I don't realize that's so bad. Yes, manipulation and control consistently over time
yeah.
is really dangerous and really bad because it grows. And
Mhm.
then you tell yourself, well, I just let them. I let them. That's dangerous. And then the other big one is just not taking ownership. If someone won't take ownership for something that they've done wrong, that's a really big red flag. You bring up, hey, this is something that happened, and their response is, um, I know it's just not my fault. I've been asking God to change it for me.
Oh,
It's God's fault because God won't change that in me. I'm just as upset as you are, Kerena. Can't you see? I'm just as upset. Let's ask God because God's not changing me. God could change anybody. It's not my fault that I don't love you. I ask God every day that I would. It's his fault that I don't. So if they can't take blame and if they blame God for their wrongdoing, oh,
mhm.
that's so dangerous. So that's just a couple of red flags. But they're sneaky because the
Yeah.
thing is, I would always be like, I'm like, I don't know, when I would have known if I got punched in the face, but it was never that. It was always, Karina, when you bring this up, it makes me want to harm myself. And so then it's, oh, well, then I won't bring it up because I love you and I don't want for
Mm,
you to experience harm. Um, it's real sneaky how it happens, and it happens gradually, slowly over time.
yep.
And so I don't think you can see the red flags when it's just
Mhm.
you and them because they're really good at it. I
Mm,
think you need a lot of people around you that you're regularly very honest with, and for them to say, "Hey, let's actually pause there and look at that." Um, because I had so much of that before the things started happening, but then I just believed my spouse because I was told that that's what's right. I was never told question your spouse. I was never told, maybe they could be wrong about these things.
yeah.
Um, so I just hook, line, and sinkered every single thing that he said and believed it as reality and pushed everyone out of my life.
Mhm.
Something you said at the beginning, maybe not of this question, but a little bit ago, was
Hmm.
there's sort of this messaging like if you're going into ministry, make sure you choose a good spouse, or
Oh,
you know, don't choose someone who's bad because, your whole ministry will tank. Like this is the biggest choice you're gonna make. And so
yes.
I think there's like a lot of pressure we often put on ourselves
Mhm.
to even recognize those red flags even before they're happening.
Yeah.
And so I think it's helpful what you're saying of like a lot of the times this is a slow, gradual thing that
Yeah.
you need people who love and care about you, who are older and wiser and have gone through more
Yeah.
life to be able to speak into you and validate maybe that little part of you that's like, this doesn't feel quite right, and
Yes.
just recognize that for you and kind of be eyes for you.
Mhm.
Because it shouldn't be all up on you to recognize, oh, I believe that this is abuse. And like,
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
oftentimes just kind of impossible.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah. You never believe it's abuse. You have to be so thoroughly convinced by real professionals
Yeah.
that it is abuse. And you're like, no, no, no. So yeah, absolutely. I just heard that message just a couple weeks ago from someone preaching at a lecture thing. And they said, make sure you choose the right spouse. And they said all of these things, and I was like, wow, that is a very dangerous message, because people are going to get into marriages and going to get abused, and they're going to believe that they chose wrongly when they didn't. They made a choice with the wisdom that they had and the people around them, and their spouse is the one who chose abuse, infidelity, abandonment, whatever the thing is that's no good and not okay. Um, it doesn't mean that you chose the wrong spouse. So, yeah, I'm so there with you on that one.
it is,
Figuring
and
out that it is abuse is
it's
the
sort of a
hardest.
way to like shift blame again.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yes. Yes, it
yes, they were
so is.
abusive, but you chose to marry them.
That's exactly right. Yep. Yep. Yes, they were abusive, but you chose to marry them. Yeah. That's exactly right. And it's like I would have never chosen if someone was like, hey, just so you
Yeah.
know, in a few
This
months,
person's
I'm going
gonna
to not
abuse
be in love
you.
with you. And I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
that I've never loved you. Do you want to marry me? No, no,
Right.
I don't want to marry you. Hey, just so you know, I'm going to leave you and tell you that God wants it. Do you want to marry me? No, if you knew, you wouldn't make those choices, but you don't because
Mhm.
you know what's in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's infuriating also that we're taught you need to choose the right spouse. And one, we're in an environment that puts this pressure on us to choose the right spouse, but does not equip us to actually see the red flags that does not equip us to see those things. Like, oh, maybe this person is abusive or could become abusive. And
Yeah.
then also there's so much pressure just to get married. And like you need to get married. And obviously, Megan, sometimes it works getting married in college or right out of college, but a lot of
Yeah.
times you're far too young to be making that decision, or like there's just such a pressure of you need to get married, it'll work out, but also choose the right spouse. And also, I'm not going to give
Totally.
you all the tools that you need to actually see if is a good spouse. And then
Totally.
it's your fault if it
Yeah.
doesn't work out. And it's just
Yeah.
such a toxic environment that like, yeah, I feel like it was kind of a Catholic version of Moody.
Uh,
Like this where's like ring by spring pressure and
totally. Yeah. Totally.
it just creates like obviously it works out. I have a lot of friends that got married that young. They're
hmm
still in healthy marriages, but a lot of times it just creates the environment for
Mm.
you to feel this pressure to get married.
The way I kind of like to talk about that is getting married in any time is rolling dice. You're
Yeah,
rolling dice and you're going to wait and see where it lands. And
right.
sometimes you can do things that give you, like, you know, help in rolling that dice. If
Yeah.
you need three, like a lineup of three ones, it'd be helpful if you had three dice in your hand as you roll. Right? It'd be helpful if you had six in your hands. Like, it's rolling dice, really. And so you can do things to roll well. Um, and at the end of the day, what you choose when you're 20 or 30 or 40, um, you can still make those same choices when you're 10, 15, 30 years down the road. But you're also married to another person who needs to make the same
Yep.
commitments and choices
Yeah.
10, 20, and 30 years down the road. And you only can control yourself.
Mhm.
And so when you're committing to another person in union for your whole life, you're trusting and hoping that they're going to be committed 10, 20, whatever. And so you just actually don't know. So no matter how wise, well, and equipped you go in, if you're young or if it's older or in a really conservative Bible college context or not, you're rolling dice and you can only control the choices and the path that you make forward. And you're trusting and believing the person is going to make a choice for God and for your good every day for all of their days. And I think that's like such a beautiful mystery of marriage and a reality that's lived out with such like wonder so we can see who God is more and more. And the reality of it can be violent, dangerous, life threatening, and life ending. And so those both those realities being so true and so palpable at the same time um, is hard to live in that both realities as
Yeah.
a Christian because you're so right, Jackie. You're getting these messages of what you're supposed to do and what's the good thing to do and what's right. And you're not equipped with tools to understand what's this other whole world that also happens as well.
Yeah, and you're right, it can happen at any age. I think
Yeah.
often I see it because in a Christian context, because there's so much pressure to marry young, and that's often what
Yeah.
happens, but it can happen at any age. And I think I struggled a lot with like going through an abusive relationship at like 25 and thinking like I was too old. Why did I
Mhm.
allow this to happen to me? Like
Mhm.
I was too old for this, but it can happen at any point in your life. And I'm interested in how you kind of worked through specifically that, like blaming yourself. You kind of talked about that,
Mm.
but I feel like that's one of the biggest things victims of abuse struggle with, of kind of processing through and accepting like, oh, that was not my fault.
Yeah. How did I work through that?
Yeah.
Geez, so much was done in therapy. Uh was geez, just like sitting and listening to someone and having them hear me say the stories over and over and over again to a trained professional who knows what to look for and what words to say to bring comfort, to bring clarity to my mind. So a lot of it was just uh, consistency over time with helpers. So that was a lot of therapy, a lot of like pastoral support, some from pastors that I had, and then some from people who just stepped in a pastoral way. And then it was also like interacting with a good groom that helped me understand what a bad groom was and how it wasn't my fault. And by that, I mean, the biggest advice that I have for women who are walking through divorce who dearly badly want to keep their face on God and dearly badly want to know, God, do you have your face on me?
Mm.
Um, is go and take communion, and it doesn't matter where. And so by that, I mean you could go to any church, and I would encourage it to really not even be the church that you go to, but just go and take communion every week because what happens there as a Christian is we say this all the time that Christ is the groom and the bride is his church. And so as a member of the church, I'm the bride. And so, what does that mean when my groom is my groom? What does that mean with Christ? It means
Mm,
Christ is never going to force me to anything.
mm,
He's never going to make me anything. He's never going to demand anything. But he's going to lovingly invite me consistently over time. Hey, Kerena, my bride, my beloved, I'm here at the end of the aisle. You want to come to me? You don't have to. It's okay if you don't for a week. It's okay if you don't for a year. Hey, Kerena, my bride, I'm right here.
mm,
I'm not going to break my vows to you. Will you come to me? Will you interact with me? I won't force you to. Not going to make you. Here's an offering of my blood and my body for you.
mm,
You can delight and take it. You don't have to. But here I am. These are vows I have to you, Karina. I'm not going to break them. My promises are for you. I'm right here. Will you come to me? You don't have to. I'm not mad at you if you don't. I'm not like more proud of you if you do. I delight in you and I want union with you. Do you want to walk down this aisle and meet me at the end? Because I'll keep my promises to you and I'll be safe. I'm not
mm,
going to hurt your body. And I like am going to provide for you. So I think actually one of the things that really helped, other than like real professional help for real, was really interacting with Jesus in a very safe, slow way,
mm,
where he just stayed exactly where he was and he made all this clarity of the world, right? Like I'm going to stay right here. You can ascend down this aisle and interact with me if you'd like. You don't have to. So interacting with someone safe, a safe groom, really helped me stop blaming myself, because seeing Christ as the groom in juxtaposition to my spouse, who was my groom, um, there are constantly in a really healthy marriage going to be Christ is Christ, so no one's going to be Christ, right? But then you start to see things that are really, really dark as being really, really dark, because they're just so not anything that Christ would ever do. Christ would never insert the thing that could have been bad. Christ would never insert the thing that would be bad. Um, and Christ doesn't force anything. He doesn't manipulate things, all of this stuff. So I think that really helped me learn, um, hey, maybe it's actually not my fault. Um, yeah, and then it was just constantly women telling me it's not my fault. I'll still be out to dinner with friends, and if they see like a gloomy face on me, they'll look at me and they'll be like, they'll put their hand on my hand and they'll say, "Hey, just wanting to let you know it's not your fault. What happened?" And then I'm like sobby. So I think it's just consistency of people saying, "I see what's real, and I'm going to tell you what's real, and what's real is you're beloved by Jesus. He's your good groom and he's safe. He's not going to hurt you. He's going to keep his vows. Also, it's not your fault." It really helped having people who knew my spouse before we got married. They've come to me and been like, "We didn't know either." Because so if you're wrong, we're all wrong, just so you know. And they came to me. No one came to me and said, "I told you so." All of them came to me and said, "Hey, Kerena, if you're stupid, we're stupid, just so you know. And you don't, and do you think I'm stupid?" And I'd be like, "No, of course you're not stupid." Right. So neither are you.
Yeah.
And that really helped me because either I believe all of my friends and everyone in my life is super dumb, or maybe we're all not. And we were all.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, it sounds like you have amazing, supportive friends, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
thank God for that because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
that
Oh my
is just
gosh.
such a gift, such a tangible way that God is present in your life as well.
Mhm.
And I know you talked about in your story that, it didn't really feel like he was like, oh, this like unique nearness, but also it wasn't a pushing, it was just sort of a
Mhm.
steady, like, help me through this next day. How
Yeah.
have you seen this experience shape your like personal relationship with God as
Yeah.
you've gone through this like intense grief and loss and suffering, and then now you're sort of on the other side of it where you're healing? How has that sort of shifted or even changed your view of God?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. God delights in me. He totally delights in me. I think as I was going through divorce, I was like, "God, do you hate me, right? Do you totally and utterly just like, do you hate me?" And I really love that passage about the woman who bled for 12 years, um, because that happened to her. She didn't choose that. That happened against her body. She was bleeding and she did everything she could. All the women I know who are divorced did everything they could for too long. Everything they could for too long. They performed their vows. And this woman went door to door. She went to every doctor. She spent every dime she ever had. I did that. I went to every doctor. I spent every dime I ever had. I like worked so hard and she worked so hard for 12 years.
Mhm.
And then when she interacts with Jesus and she finds a way to like interact with him, she touches the edge of his hem, she feels in her body she's healed, and then she runs. She doesn't want anyone to see it. And then when she's falling before Jesus's face, she's trembling, she's terrified because anything could happen there. And for me, it was like I got the thing that was going to bring healing. I touched the edge of Jesus's cloak. I got a certificate of divorce. And I was like, let me run. Like that, I'm so scared because what if God hates me? Let me turn my face and run. He got me out. And now I'm scared. What does he say? Because that passage, that talks about like God hates it really actually says like God hates when men divorce their spouse in their youth and hate their spouse.
Mhm.
Um, but we translate it the like Malachi passage as God hates divorce.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that God loves divorce, but I'm saying that it says something a little bit different there, the wording. But anyhow, there in that moment when she's laying there, she's expecting to be dealt with harshly by Jesus. And that's what I was expecting as I was like literally on divorce day and the days passed, expecting to be laid there before Jesus and him to be harsh with me and the way that he interacts with me publicly. So that like literally everyone can see,
Mm.
not in secret, but so that like my pastors can see and my church can see and my workplace can see that Jesus looks at me and says, daughter, was like huge for me to be like, whoa, maybe I'm, maybe I can relate more closely with really cool women in scripture who Jesus interacts with in really healing and beautiful ways. So that was like really incredible to be able to interact with Jesus in that way, to be like, oh, wow, whoa, like I am actually in a great company of women who have had things that have happened that they didn't choose. And then they fell terrified in front of Jesus. And Jesus says, your daughter, your faith is in me. You are healed. Go and live a free, healed life.
Mm.
And so that was incredible to be able to do that. That didn't happen as it was happening, right? But it happened as I like look back, I can see like Christ's realities as I look
Right.
into the back of my story. Other things that like really shaped my view of God. Um, I always say like there were a lot of shepherds that came around me and helped. But when the shepherds lacked, because there was a lot of lack there, when the shepherds lacked, the sheep around me literally saved my life. Like the sheep literally saved my life. And by that, I had people show me who Jesus is, and I didn't know it in the time, but now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the hands and feet in the ministry of Jesus. That was like Jesus was like, if I believe it, like they are indwelt with the Holy Spirit. That was the Lord
Mhm.
interacting with me through that person saying yes to serving God and serving
Mm.
me. Things that were like the first time I had a panic attack, I was laying in my bed, shaking for hours, and I didn't know what to do. And my pastors wouldn't come and pray because I was a girl and it was late at night. And so the women came. And the women came, and one of them sat at my bed and she couldn't look at me. And one of them sat at my bed and she couldn't look, but she could put her hand on me. And another one was looking at me and she was telling me, she's a therapist, she's one of my friends. Hey, Kerena, let your body shake. It won't overtake you. She was just coaching my brain. And my best friend laid her body on top of mine. And like, it was just like beautiful. Like, she was just there. And her
Mhm.
face was so close to mine. And she was just laying on me. And she just would say over and over in my ear, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. And like looking back at it, me and her always say we're like that totally melded us together in this like beautiful intimacy, but also it was just so Jesus was there with me.
Mm.
It was Jesus like weighing on my body and saying, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. Every time my mom came and flew to be with me, and she would tell me, Karina, you're going to preach. Karina, you're not done. Karina, this is going to open doors you have no idea are going to open for you.
Mm.
That was totally Jesus talking to me through my mom. That was totally Jesus. So there were things that I was like, literally, I never read my Bible. Not at one time. Not a singular time did I open up a Bible and read it. I wasn't reading anything. Not one time did I actually sit down and be like, I'm going to pray and do my devos. I never did that.
Mhm.
But looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, the Lord literally showed up for me.
Oh
But
yeah.
what's so crazy about that is like, the Lord showed up for me with my non-Christian friends as well in effervescent ways because the Lord made everybody in his image.
Mhm.
And so these people would come alongside of me. I had to get a couple extra jobs. I was working at a restaurant, made some of my best friends there. And they just every day checking on me, every day drawing into me, like towards me. They weren't Christians, but what that meant was they weren't afraid of my mess. They
Yeah.
weren't like
Yeah.
treating me like I was contagious or what happened to me could rub off on them. They weren't afraid of my fury. They weren't like, you're too mad at God and you're too mad at the church. They were like, yeah, rage. You can rage and you can still love God. And these people like, don't ascribe to any of that. They just love me. But I saw so much of God in them because they loved me. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Lord is using literally all of these sheep around me to keep me safe and to keep
Mm.
my face on Christ. And so yeah, I would say like there was no point where I was like, wow, this small group really transformed my life. I was so miraculously. There was no like that sermon really hit home. And that's beautiful when that happens, but it's just not what happened for me. I would go late to service. I didn't want anyone to talk to me because they were going to mess it up. And I would leave early and I would take communion and I would go. I would literally take what I wanted and flee. And then in all of these interactions that people were having because they were drawing in, it was Jesus saying, you're my daughter. I delight in you. My face is kind towards you. And I'm inviting you towards myself. So, and also that was not my focus when it was happening.
Yeah.
So, like to the
Mhm.
girls who are going through it, that's not my
Yeah.
focus. My focus was learn how to breathe again.
Right.
And how do
Mhm.
you swallow food when your friend's spoon feeding you and you don't spit it back out? And that was my focus. So, you really don't need to focus on how do I like keep my face on Christ. The sheep around you are going to like really love you like Christ, and the Lord's going to just bring that into your life. And maybe like years down the road, you're going to have like someone lovingly say, hey, look back at that. Do you see that? Do you see that like that was Jesus right there? You don't need to do that
Yeah.
to yourself though right now. You just need to like
Yeah.
figure out how to sleep and eat and like regulate your body while
Mhm.
you're going through it. But that's where Jesus showed up for me in a huge way.
Yeah.
Well, and what's beautiful too is even if in the moment you're not recognizing it, Jesus is
Yeah.
still there. He doesn't
Yeah.
need you to acknowledge him. He is
No.
just there. And
Yes.
so it's wonderful when you can look back later and see, oh
Yeah.
wow, that was really Jesus. Like that was, even though it was my friend's voice, it was his words coming to me
Mm.
in the moment, even if you're not acknowledging that, he's still speaking over you. He's still present
Yeah.
with you. And I think
Yeah.
that is what's so powerful too, because it is
Hmm.
truly all on Jesus. It is not
Yeah.
up to me to be in the right place to receive him. Like
Mm-mm.
he
Yeah.
is there.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I, and it's just, I think what's like so tender about how Jesus is he's so not mean. And he's just consistent over time. And I think that's what's been so special is he's just totally not super mean, not like a mean guy. Um, and then all of the people who love him and who don't, the Lord is using to love me and for me to see who God is. And so, yeah, I think it just like radically broke all of my boxes that I had God in of like, you experience God at church, you experience God when you're praying, you experience God when you memorize all of these things. And being like, yeah, I experienced God because the people in my life who love him and who don't um ran to me.
Mhm.
Ran. And the thing is like when you're going through divorce, it's like you're free falling.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's true because I've never free fallen off of anything in my entire life, but I like to live in imagery. And so it feels like you're literally just, it feels like you just fell back, like you got pushed. And now you're free falling. And as you are, you don't know what's below you, but you're smashing things on the way down and they're hurting. And above you, you see all of your dreams and all of your future and everything you loved just at the top of the mountain that you were on. And as you're falling, you're seeing like everything that was important to you whooshing through your eyes. And you're like, what do I do? And then you realize as you look around, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people who like fell back with me, who are willing to just smash into all of these things with me. And they can't totally catch me because they don't know where we're going.
Mm.
And they're not standing up on the top throwing little treats at me. They're like, hey, you're free falling off this terrible reality. Let me free fall with you,
Yeah.
and provide resourcing for you and share the load of love and care and support, because it can't just be one person. It needs to be shared amongst a lot of different people. And what you realize when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, the Lord was like giving me so many hands to hold. And he was with me literally the whole time when I was falling off of the cliff that I didn't want to be pushed off of.
I think also something you said at the beginning were the little prayers that you would pray that you felt were the most genuine. And I think when I've been going through something, I picture prayer as like sitting and reading my Bible or sitting and reflecting and having this whole time carved out.
Yeah.
But really, and we see it in the Psalms, like often prayer can just be like help. And that's all that you can
Help,
offer. Help.
help, help, help,
That's
help.
all you
Yes.
say. You were saying like, God, help me eat, help me to be able to sleep. Like just these little tiny prayers are sometimes all that you can offer. And that's, I mean, God, he doesn't even need that, but like those are prayers. I think often we think of prayer in this one way or like going to
Yeah.
church,
Yep.
worshiping, praise and worship. Like we think that's what prayer is, but prayer, it can be as little as just saying, God, like crying out to God or being angry with him. We see that like, God, why did this happen? Why have you abandoned me? Why? And that's still a prayer.
Oh yeah.
And I
Yep.
think that sometimes that's all that we can offer
Mm-hmm.
during times of ex whatever it is, like of extreme trauma, of
Mm-hmm.
extreme illness, of, you know, and that's okay. And God is there
Yep.
and he's hearing those things.
Oh yeah. And they were also just literally the most genuine prayers I've ever prayed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like now when I
After
pray, I'm
that.
like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And then I'll say all these flowery things and I'm like, no. I'm like, those were the most genuine prayers, were the ones that were just, you know, me deep breathing, trying to get myself okay and just help, 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 were the most genuine. And looking back, I'm like, oh, and they were heard. The Lord heard them and he answered them.
Yeah. I'm curious, you talked about how, and unfortunately, this is the experience. I think a lot of times churches do not respond in the right way to
Totally.
someone going through divorce, especially women
Mm-hmm.
going through divorce. And do you
Mm-hmm.
have any ways in which you, I don't know, advice to a church, but even what someone should
Yeah.
expect, like how a church should respond to
Geez.
someone going through divorce?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I think that as I process my own experience of going to church at that time, and I don't go to the same church I was a member at when I was married and when I was going through divorce, I'm at a totally different church now because there was lots of pain there. Um, but I categorize it this way. Me and my best friend started doing this together. We categorize into these two buckets: yays, yucks. It's just really tangible. It's really easy to just get at quickly. Is when you process any experience, you can just put them into those buckets, um, and you can ask God about it. So it's yays, yucks, questions, and that's what we would do. And so when I think about processing things with the church, it's like, here are all these things that were yay, really good. Here's all these things that were yuck. And God, can I ask you about that? And you can totally stay in a church, and there doesn't have to be like a certain balance on either side of the yays and the yucks to make it a valid reason for you to stay at that church.
Mm.
But also, there doesn't have to be a certain amount of yucks in comparison to the yays for you to be valid for leaving that church. Um, so I just think that's important for women to know, is that like you can stay and things cannot be resolved. You can also leave and things cannot be resolved. Both options are really okay when you're a divorced or divorcing person
Mm.
in the church. Things that I think, gosh, with the church, things that I think could be really helpful are disaster plans are really helpful for churches to have for trauma. And I'm not just saying divorce trauma, but just trauma. Really good leaders have disaster crisis plans. And so I think that as you are someone who might be walking through your own trauma, divorce or divorcing or other, you might want to check out and see what are the pastoral or leadership crisis plans. What are their plans for what they've done? What have they done in the past? And just getting a grasp on what is that like? Because if they've never done that before, chances are it's going to be really messy. If
Mm.
they've done it before, you might be able to have some good understanding of how it is that they navigate it. But good leaders have disaster plans before those disasters strike. Other things are whether you're like, no matter what church you're at, church leaders should have people who are available um, that can meet with you.
Mm.
So, it doesn't have to be, it depends on capacity and all of these things, but there should be someone who's available to meet with you in a way that you feel safe with and in a way that they feel safe with. Um, and so the church should be equipped with leaders, staff or not staff, who are equipped and ready to actually be in someone's life when they're going through crisis. Other things, the biggest thing I think the church needs is trauma training, crisis and trauma training from like actual trauma crisis therapists and pastoral people who can train these kinds of things. Because when you're going through trauma and crisis, you don't want to teach someone how to interact with you through trauma and crisis. You just want them to interact with you safely in a helpful way. It's not always going to be helpful, but and then also it's like the training that happens. It's I don't know. It's kind of like I think that the staff needs to know when crisis happens, it happens fast. When trauma is happening, it is happening quickly and fast. So in normal times, it is super wise in my understanding of theology to move about choices slowly with discernment, with lots of people around you helping inform choices. That's really good to go slow about making a church transition. Where do we move buildings? Let's not make that in 1 week. Hey, who do we hire? Let's not make that choice in a month. Let's go about this slow. But when crisis happens, choices need to be made very quickly for safety and stability. And what I was being met with was a church that really desired to follow God wisely and safely, but that came with such slow walks and steps, and I
Mm.
needed urgency.
Mm.
The day I needed to move out, I needed a place to stay, and my church was asking, "Hey, we'll let you know in a week or two if someone has a place for you to stay." I can't survive a week or two. I need somewhere tonight. Things like that where, hey, we'll talk in a couple of weeks about how to interact in that situation. Well, unfortunately, I have to sign these papers within the next week. Can you meet with me in the next 5 days to talk about like me signing these papers? So there's things that happen in crisis that are really quick. And I think that churches are really right to pursue most things in slowness, discernment over time, but need a lot of training and
Mm.
help in knowing when crisis happens, you don't have the luxury of taking your time. You
Mm.
need wisdom, discernment, and humility to act quickly.
Mm.
And if the choice lands wrong, course correct. And that I think is a huge one is get some trauma training, hire some outside professionals to train you up, and then know that categorically trauma and crisis are a different type of ministry to step into pastorally than ordinary grief or prolonged suffering or other normative situations that you might be met with for the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
also, in the ways that a church can provide the person with a lot of opportunity for themselves to decide, in what ways can they choose what happens here,
Mhm.
and in what ways are you going to choose? And you can give them offerings of yes or no. But that would be really helpful to not choose everything for the person, and not put it all on the person to decide, what do you want? But to have a combination of, hey, here are some options we can provide. We want you to say yes or no to. Also, do you have some ideas that we could potentially partner with you and say yes or no to as well? Yeah, and then I think that also like uh, when there's someone like publicly, um, I was leading in ministry, and I really, really wanted for my church to know what was going on.
Mhm.
Um, and they didn't. My
Mhm.
small group knew, and they fought for me, and they were with me, and they walked with me, and they left before me. And I would have loved for the opportunity to have a moment for the like actual staff and for the church to know Karena's going through it. Can we be praying for her?
Yeah.
She's stepping down not because of moral failings of her own. She's stepping down from these things because we've decided together that this is what's best for her in this season. And if you want more, you can go and connect with her, or maybe don't, like, whatever. But
Mhm. Mhm.
pulling the person in to the church in times of crisis and need, and not seeing them or pushing them away as like, oh, they could be a liability, or oh, they could be a problem here.
Mm.
I think that's
That's also a ton of advice from someone who's extremely not trained as like a
no,
crisis trauma church person.
Oh, I think
I
that's
think that's all
great.
extremely important.
Yeah,
And I love what you said too about like allowing some choices to be made by the person going through it, because a lot of the
hmm,
times a lot of their choices have been ripped from them.
exactly.
A lot of their agency has been torn from them. And so to return some of that to them, even if it's like just a choice of,
Yeah,
do you want to stay here or here?
yeah,
Sometimes that could be very,
right.
very healing even too, because it's some agency returned.
Hmm,
So no, I think that's all wonderful advice. And
hmm,
I know you say you're not a professional, but you have professional experience in your
right.
life.
Totally.
And what I love is that you are taking that as an opportunity to minister to other women.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
we will link your Instagram, but
Oh,
could
yeah.
you talk a little bit about starting your Instagram, sort of
Hmm,
your vision for it? What are some of
hmm.
your big dreams,
Oh my gosh.
and
Yeah.
how is God working through that?
Oh, I'd love to. Yes. So, as I was going through all of this, doors were closing left and right.
Mhm.
I lost all of the ministries I was getting to serve in at church. I was also leading a women's conference, and I was removed from that as well. And then, yeah, so after a good year and a half of just throwing myself into grief care, knowing, hey, Lord, if I harbor this inside of myself and don't work through it, I think I'm going to wreak havoc on my own life and the lives of others. So, can you do a good work with me? I'm going to partner with therapists, pastors, friends to grieve well, and to walk through healing here. And can you open doors for me? And so, as that was happening, there were a lot of doors I was knocking on, and they weren't answering because, if there's one thing that's not great, if you're a theologian, it's being a girl in a lot of spaces. And don't hear me wrong, I'm saying that in jest. I think it's wonderful and amazing to be a theologian and a girl. But sometimes it's not seen that way when you're applying for cool jobs. But the double whammy there is, hey, what could add to that? Oh, and also you're divorced. So if you're divorced and a girl, but you have dreams of theology and a bunch of degrees, it's tough out there. So I knew that as I was going into this. And at first I thought that was going to crush my ministry and I was never going to have any doors open.
Yeah.
And then what I started to realize was, wait, what if the Lord is giving me, like, there's not doors to knock on, but what if He's giving me the ability to build a door, giving me the tools to build a door, and then I can ask Him in His loving kindness, open it. And so it was about 6 months ago that I had some friends really encourage me, Karina, you know what? Like, there's been so much healing work. There's been so much that you've been walking through in grief care, and there's a lot of healing to go. What do you think about telling women what's going on? I bet there's other women out there. What do you think about telling them? Being yourself and saying things honestly and just showing up exactly as you are. What do you think about telling them? And I was like, honestly, what do I have to lose? Honestly. And that's what really gave me the push is I was like, what if I lose my job? And I'm like, I love the people that I work with very gingerly and dearly. And I'm a secretary. I'm an office administrator. What if I lose my job? Okay, I think that I can handle it and the Lord can handle it and my friends at that place can handle it. Um, what if I never get to be a pastor? Well, I'm not a pastor now, so that's okay. These things, what do I've got to lose? And being like, not a spouse, not a job, not a ministry. Let me try it. So then I had a friend who her and I are really close, and she came to me and she was like, "Hey, Karina, when I look at you, I want you to know, like she was helping me with brand creation because I was like, I don't know, should I create a brand? And she does brand development.
Mm.
She goes, when I look at you, I see a disco ball. And I go, oh my gosh, tell me more. This was over a Galentine's meal. We're giggling. And she tells me, she's like, I see you as a disco ball. And she is not someone who ascribes to a church. And so, anyways, so she was telling me, she was like, when I look at you, what I see is you're like this mirror ball who reflects who God is on yourself and other people, and you reflect who women are from the past and in scripture on yourself and other people, not in a flamethrowery way, just in a like you're held up, there's light shined onto you, and you just beam it. And she was like, but you're the disco ball because in order to become one, a piece of glass had to be smashed on the ground and then glued onto a circle, held up really high for everyone to look at. And I'm sobbing hearing this, and she's sobbing, and she's like, but I don't know. I'm like not your target demographic. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You love me so much. And like that was totally the Lord just speaking through you to me. And I know so much about who God is because you're in my life and you love me and you see me. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's the most redemptive reality ever is my friends who just see me and they're
Yeah.
just telling me what they see. And this friend of mine telling me, this is what I see in you. And me being like, are you kidding? That's so shimmery. Like, really? And her being like, no, really. And us just having this really cool moment. And so, Disco Ball Theologian is the name of the ministry that I'm starting up and that we're starting up is this reality of in order to be a disco ball theologian, you've got to be someone who is smashed and who goes and asks the Lord, will you put my smashed bits together? Not that the smashed bits are the things that make me pretty, but that you're using the smashed bits and you're making something shimmery out of it. And so Disco Ball Theologian is just women who have walked through intense realities that they didn't choose for themselves. And the Lord took his shimmery pink hot glue gun and those smashed little bits and put them on an orb hung up really high so that we can shimmer who God is on ourselves and on the people around us, and that we can shimmer like the women who've gone before us on ourselves and on the people around us. And I say the women because women can become what they see. And so when we see women in scripture who are like heroines of the faith, who are doing really cool things like advocating, saying what's true, witnessing, repeating what happened, even if they're not believed, who lead, who preach, who, do all of these things, we can see those women and say, whoa, what if I could do that too? Then you see women in history and you see women around you, and so Disco Theo is this reality of even the smash bits. We don't have to hide them. We don't have to fix them. The Lord can actually like make them into this really beautiful reality for him, for you, for the people around you. And it's super redemptive. And so yeah, Disco Theo is just this effort to help women know that they can, should, and must step into every area that God calls them into, that they're actually not disqualified because of the things that they've done, the things that have been done against them,
Mhm.
the things that they've left undone, that they're not disqualified because of those things. When you have like you are just facing towards Christ, um, he's going to glue all of those bits together into something shimmery. So, yeah, it's this effort for women can, should, and must step in every area that God calls them into. They're not disqualified by anything. You can grieve in a really big way. That's part of Disco Theos. You can grieve in a really big way and you can celebrate in a really big way. And those are not mutually exclusive. And you don't have to those don't have to fight each other. You can be someone who grieves big, celebrates big for yourself, for other people. And that like joy actually comes back. You can experience joy and delight in the Lord amidst the smashing of all those bits and after the smashing of all those bits. You don't have to forget about it all. It doesn't have to just be something that never happened. It doesn't have to be the only thing. Yeah, and then the other thing is just that women aren't alone. I had no clue there was a single other divorced
Mhm.
Christian girl who had a degree in seminary, anything. I
Yeah.
didn't know that a single other person existed like that. And what it told me so fast when I started building Disco Theo is there's like an insurmountable amount of us. There's like dozens of us every day that talk every day from all over the world, every age group, who literally walked through exactly the same things as me. And I'm like, wow, I'm completely not alone. We're all asking the same questions. We're all like, God, do you hate me? And his answer is, you're my daughter. And so we're Disco Theo because I'm not the only disco ball theologian, but each woman that I interact with is a Discoball theologian too, because she has these bits that have been smashed, and the Lord has, in his kindness, stuck them together in an orb hung up high to shine who God is on themselves, who women are on themselves, and the people around them. So that's what Theo is all about. I have no idea what's going to happen because I don't know anything about starting ministry. I don't know things about um, Instagram or social media or all of this stuff. All I know is, you know, I care so much about women. And this is such a big point of when you're choiceless because of things that have happened against you, Disco Theo is such an expression of I have a choice.
Mm.
I have a choice now. I did not have a choice in the things that happened against me. I have a choice now. Who do I tell? How do I say it? I have a choice now. And what like I get to choose. Do I want to make something really pretty out of this? Do I want to grieve about this? Do
Mm.
I want to celebrate massive? Do I want to write sad poems? Like it's this effort to reclaim the reality that happened. And even in the most choiceless situations, I can find a choice in how I tell the story or how I want to interact. So that's Disco Theo.
I love that because I feel like after a trauma or even specifically going through an abuse, you often feel, and it's message to you that you're tainted, you're
Yes.
broken. Well, of course,
Yeah.
yes, well, first of all, as humans, we're all broken, but yes, of course,
Yeah.
there is some damage done. You feel broken, but
Oh, yeah.
it's through those, and Paul talks about this. I think Saint
Mm-hmm.
Augustine is it's in our deepest weaknesses and our wounds is where
Mm-hmm.
Christ often works the most
Mm-hmm.
deeply, where we become most intimate with him and where his grace, I feel like often
Mm-hmm.
yeah, penetrates the most deeply, and it's what shapes us and where he uses us most are in those wounds
Mm-hmm.
and in those weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it's often how of course, those are evil, bad things, never wanted them to happen, wouldn't
For
look
sure.
back and say, I wanted those things to happen to me, but um, that's often what God will use the most to
Yeah.
serve others, to be a conduit of his grace. Um, and so I love that's exactly what you're saying, like the image of the disco ball, like it's broken,
Mm-hmm.
but that God shines through us. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
in more beautiful ways,
Mm-hmm.
those things that happen, that God just really can redeem anything. And I think
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful message.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Yeah, and it's cool too because like every cool girl that I love has had like absolute smashed bits about things that have happened in her life and then like rose up from it in the coolest ways possible. And I'm like, "Whoa, what if I could like, stand next to them and maybe one day I could be one of the women who
Mm.
gets to stand next to these other women who had smashed things and then kept their face turned towards Christ and he kept his face turned towards them and they changed the world and they like inspired women and encouraged women that like all is not lost and the Lord is there with them. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I don't know, I think it's also just like a big push for like all the things that I wanted and just doing it online and being like, oh, other women want it too. Other women want deeply to be told, you're not bad at healing. It's messy and it's like not, it's hard and it's so uncomfortable for everyone around you and everyone around you. Healing sucks. um all the stuff that I just wanted and a lot of it that I got and now me and all the people around me are just like dumping it into this thing we're calling Disco Theo and we're just gonna see what lands and see what sticks because little girls and me as an adult need to know that grief is coming and that rejoice is real and that there are women who have walked both realities and you can be really cool and a girl and the Lord can have his face on you through it all.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that the message too is that, you're not alone.
Yeah, you're
If
not.
you're going through suffering, you're in good
Yep.
company.
You're in good
Not only
company.
not only
Yeah.
with you, but also with Christ. We have a
Yes.
high priest who is not unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but in every way suffered as we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Yes.
think that's such a powerful
Mhm.
reminder for any stage of
Right.
suffering that you're in.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool too how Mary's husband resolved to divorce her? And like he changed his mind. But I'm just like, there's like you when you go through bad stuff, you read these characters in such different ways, and you're like, what?
Mhm.
I can relate to Mary even in this. Like,
Mhm.
and she can relate to me. And yeah, so it's cool to be like, there are all these people I can relate to, and
Mhm.
how deeply I can know Christ and how deeply Christ knows me even in this. You're
Yeah.
so right. So yeah, it's like it's um the worst of all of time and also thank God that he like actually can weave something into something pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any just you've given so much advice throughout the interview, but if there's anything
Oh my
else, like kind
gosh.
of message you would want to give to women that are going through abuse or divorce, and just you said like that healing process, it is so messy and it's
Yeah.
oftentimes t takes a lot longer than we want it to.
Mhm.
And just any, yeah, like final advice or just something you'd really want to say to women in that position.
Yeah. It's not your fault. Um, your dreams aren't gone. You can pursue family and ministry. You will be okay. Your family will be okay. The Lord wants you to pursue the things that He's preparing for you to do. You don't have to hide what's happened. What's happened isn't the only thing that's cool about you or something interesting about you. You don't have to tell anybody. You can tell everyone. Um, and the things that feel silly that you don't think are going to help, maybe they won't, but it's worth it to try it because maybe they will. And that you should run as a Christian girl in abuse. You should run. And me and all of the friends I know will help you run. I'll help you file. I'll help you go to court. I'll help you when you have to meet with your lawyers. I'll go with you. And there's a lot of women who will do that for you as well. You don't have to do that alone. And God can redeem even this. Everything isn't ruined now because of this.
Mm.
Also, the things that you like about who you are, they can come back and you will like really cool things again too. Also, no one cares about it as much as you think they're going to care about it. in the beginning, you think everyone hates you and everyone's staring at you, and sometimes they kind of are. But also, no one cares. It's sensational for 2 months for everybody. Everyone, it's the hottest gossip for 2 months. Nobody, literally nobody cares. So
Mm.
if that's any comfort to you, it's humbling to be like, wait, nobody cares about this anymore. But it's
Mhm.
also, so it's humbling, but it's also relieving to be like, actually, people are looking at the things that are going on in their own hearts and their own lives. So
Yeah.
there's some pressure off there. So that's what I would say about that. You're not bad. The Lord loves you. His face is towards you. Um, and it's okay if you need to run. There are people who are going to help you do it.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, sharing what God is doing through you. Um, I know it's easy to listen to these stories. It's much harder to share them, especially when
Mm.
it's your story. And
Yeah.
so I just want to, yeah,
Mm.
to really thank you for that because it's an extremely vulnerable thing. It's
Yeah.
scary, it's hard.
Mm.
It causes you to kind of relive it. So I
Mm.
don't take that lightly at all. We're so grateful and blessed that we could receive your story today.
Mhm.
And I know our listeners will feel the same way. And so thank you so much. And then
Mm.
also I just love everything you've shared, the advice, the wisdom. I can just really see how God is making something so beautiful out of this
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
you. And I think that you are exhibiting such a strength and a beauty
Mm.
in it. And so yeah, just want to encourage you in that way. I think this is such a wonderful ministry that God has opened up for you to build. And
Mm.
I know you say like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing," but I think you're doing it. Like that this
Thanks.
is what it's all about, talking
Right.
to people and ministering and something like you were saying, like it's the pieces of paper and the study only get you so far, but the actual life experience and connecting to each other in what we're going through that is often where God does the most work.
Right.
So I love
Right.
what you're doing, and we are just praying and cheering you on.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for cheering me on. The Lord's been really kind to me and really like dotingly gentle and a lot with his kindness and his love towards me. So, even in the things that I share, I'm like, oh yeah, the Lord has just done a really like healing and kind work that I just didn't think was possible. So it's truly like a delight to get to share little bits and to bring you alongside of it. So
Yeah.
I like just feel really thankful that you would have me and that you would ask me and that you'd be like, wait, I think women want to hear this because I'm like, okay, sure. If you think so, let's do it. So it means a lot to me.
Yeah, I think that, and I pray, and I just know that women will listen to this and just feel a lot of comfort and inspiration. And um, yeah, I think it's going to be really beautiful and fruitful for a lot of women listening and healing, I think. So yeah, I thank you so much for sharing. It's very brave to share these things. And I'm excited to share this with our listeners, especially the women that listen.
I'm excited too. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.